worries. This film was deeply moving for so many reasons, for a lot of you, for those of us that are caregivers for our families, and I just wanted to start off by asking you the creativity that goes behind it. I know since you were a little kid, your dad incentivized you to be, very creative, right, with all your art. So tell us how you decided to take this direction with, the little small-scale house and the animation and the everything else that went behind your creativity.
I mean, growing up in a trailer in a backyard with two parents that were disabled, low income, low access to resources, no siblings. For me, creativity, as I allude to in the end, was like my escape from so much of the limitations I felt that was imposed on me. And through what I call my addiction to creativity, I was able to find ways to transcend reality and transcend the limitations that I felt so much growing up. And I would eventually receive the Gates Millennium Scholarship, which allowed me to go to college in New York City, where I went to both Pratt Institute and NYU. And I developed, that's how I started studying digital filmmaking, a lot of green screening, compositing. And then later, I remember when 3D printing was starting to be a big deal, I was like, you know what, I keep seeing all these little fantasy characters, like Dungeons and Dragons stuff with miniatures and all these things, but what if Grandpa? What if I can make a little miniature Grandpa? And then I made a short film in 2013 called How You Doing Boy? Voicemails from Grandpa, because whenever I pick up the phone, he doesn't, and he knows it's me, he doesn't say hello, he's like, oh, how's you doing, boy? So from there, that show, or that later would become Grandpa Knows Best, my series that was on HBO for 2 years, which you saw a clip of, the junkie food, the junkie food, that episode. And really, I just love it because working in miniature, it's like play. It's like permission for an adult. For me, I'm 43. I turned 43 a few weeks ago. 43-year-old me to connect with who I was as a child and just play and be able to not just play, but make art, and not just make art, but make art that connects with people and leads to like a sort of communal catharsis.
Mm-hmm. And I love a lot of the analog references in this too, and the stop motion that you included in it. So how did you decide to expand the narratives? Because I know you had made a comment about like a lot of your projects are based off of like your family experiences, so tell me about that.
What, can you say that again?
Oh, sure. So a lot of your narratives, you said, in the film are geared around family, so tell me about that process.
Oh, why I decided to make my family, why I'm so interested in them? I think it's because they have such great stories and such great ways of communication that to me just are authentic. And also there's this idea that I think we always felt like we were relegated to we're on the outskirts of the American narrative. And I've learned growing up, education really empowered me that no, we are the American narrative. We are woven into this story, and even though we are different, I mentioned before the film started that diversity is not a dirty word, and that we are Americans, and that our story matters just as much as all the stories I saw growing up, which had majority, white actors and white writers and everyone in front and behind the camera. That I felt that I could use my voice. My creativity to give a voice to those who didn't really have one, or who felt like no one would ever be interested in these stories. I remember the first time I showed my grandpa an episode of Grandpa Knows Best, which stars him, and stars his voice. He pulls me over, he's like, it's a good thing, but I don't know if people are gonna like it. I'm like, why? He's like, because the young people, they want to see the movie with the car that go really fast, or the boom, big explosion. I don't think they want to see little me. And I'm like, Grandpa, you're an icon, and people love you, and I'm here to change that.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing about family, right? Everyone's very animated and very colorful in their storytelling. So how was that process like when you approach your mom and having to reenact, you know, a lot of the dialogue you had from your grandmother, the recordings?
What's so much more difficult, but I love it because it's like an adventure making a documentary, is that when you make a narrative, you have a script. You know what the actors should say. Maybe there may be some improv, but you're a slave to the script. With documentary, who knows? You don't know what's going to happen. And so I told myself, you know, I'm not even going to prepare my mom and say, hey, Mom, tomorrow I want you to pretend we're going to ask you this question if you want to, you know, do these messages of, reenact these messages that Grandma left behind. She didn't know that until she got there. But I was prepared, like, if she doesn't want to do that, you know, the cameras will still be there. We'll have to wing it. So, yeah, so I think documentary, like, it allows, it's almost like a choose your own adventure, and you kind of go where things take you. But I'm lucky. I'm very proud of her for taking those steps. She's not very involved in any of the creative arts in regard to like filmmaking. She's never animated, and I think she's a natural. All that entire like montage of her rehearsing my grandma's, you know, lines that I turned into, you know, miniature, that was done in maybe like 3 hours. She was able to get it, and I'm like, see, Mom, like, stop watching your Korean soap operas. You have a lot that you can do. You just try.
Yeah. And with the recordings of you as a little kid, and your dad would tell you, hey, I want you to say this, I want you to do that. What were your early memories of that? Were you thinking like, oh, I want to do something in relation to TV and what we're doing with the recordings?
Yeah, I remember I would listen to those tapes every so often growing up, and not, obviously I don't remember because some I'm like 2 years old, and it's almost like a fade in of like life where it's like I kind of remember maybe a different conversation in the years, like I kind of remember having that with my dad, but it's almost like the before time when, you know, after I was born but when I have no memory, and bringing it to life through this, you know, rotoscoping where I mentioned, you know, here I am, back then I think I was 39, recording myself, and but my dad was 25, 26, 25, so it's like I'm an older version of my dad that's, you know, performing as him, and I'm off screen as like the four-year-old playing Simon Says. So I think there's something so pure and innocent about that moment, because it's also when he was at his healthiest. I think my dad, his entire life, has just been like almost like a decrescendo of him just getting gradually sicker and sicker each year. He's been a diabetic since he was 16. Diabetes robbing him more and more of his health, and especially when he developed kidney failure, which was, you know, 2 years after we moved into that trailer, or about a year after, pretty close.
Yeah, and what was your mom's reaction when you told her, hey, I want you to, you know, reenact some of these scenes? Was she like okay with it, or did she say, no, mijo, I don't want to?
We talked about it, but I think she was open. I'm like, Mom, I want to show a blend of like grandma's like really fun and quirky moments, like, you know, Millie, la novela, you know, like that, and then also like, Mom, like, I also want to show like when Grandma was also fading, like when she was sicker, and that one message of her falling down, and my mom did it with such like courage and conviction, so I'm very proud of her for doing that, and yeah, like she did it. I know she did it for me, and then, you know, after she did that, she was telling me and Ben, who's my camera person, she was like, okay, you guys hungry? Let me make you something. You want a snack? I'm like, Mom, we have a budget. We can go out. We could get food. She's like, no, I'll make you something. Why you unpack? I'm like, we're gonna get food after this. So she just went right back to mom mode, which is pretty much the main identity that she's always had.
Did she ever make homemade mofongo?
She does it. So yeah, the mofongo, I love it. My mom, yeah, it was. We had some of that. What else did we have that day? But I forget. She, no matter what, she's crafty. She's always doing craft services, and there's always like food around. Yeah.
Yeah. Leave it to moms to have the home cooked meal and the best craft services anybody could ever have, right? So, and I know in a portion of the documentary where you had the conversation with your dad after watching the news, how difficult was that? Because that reminded me of conversations I've had with my parents. And how you face that, you know, as far as like your multiple identities, you know, because a lot of us have very intersectional lives. So what was that like, that moment where you were having that conversation with your dad initially?
Yeah, it's always been like so bizarre. Like my dad's homophobia was like always, till the day he died. I came out to him literally like 2 months before, in 2014, yeah, 2 months before my wedding, to a woman who knew that I was bisexual, because I'm like, yeah, I'm bisexual, I'm also monogamous. I thought my dad was gonna be cool, and he like, yeah, it was brutal. And then we just had this like agreement that we just wouldn't talk about it, you know?
Right.
And so this conversation where I'm like, hey Dad, we just talked about how you were affected because, you know, these coworkers of yours, you know, said the N-word, and yet every time it's TV and he sees like an effeminate man, or, you know, God forbid he lands like RuPaul's Drag Race, he's always like literally say like those effing faggots, like
right.
with such like disdain in his voice. I'd never hear him say, and I think I'm just like, yeah, like, you know, this is who I am, and you just have to deal with it. And then after that conversation, we never talked about it again. We went back to watching TV, and it was just like, well, I guess this is how it's gonna be. But I'm happy I recorded that conversation, because I want people to know that like not every memory that we have with our loved ones is gonna be like, oh, you know, like nostalgic in a good way. Like some are gonna be brutal, but it's, like I said, I don't want to like put the impression that like, oh, if you're LGBT and you have a family member that's abusive, you have to love them because they're your family member. Like, no, like that is your decision to treat them. You can feel free to disconnect with other people, with people in your family that have disrespected you in ways that you're not ready to move on. I just know that my dad had other elements, and you know, he was a complex person, and so I choose to forgive him in that sense, and know that like, yeah, like not every memory is a happy memory.
And especially because he introduced you to the creativity of recording you on a cassette, and then that led to you becoming even a bigger artist, right? Going to college and a filmmaker.
Yeah.
And that segues to like your mom going to Pride with you. What was that like? You know, what was her impression to say, "Mijo, look, I'm in all rainbow gear"?
Growing up, she was also, you know, I think the homophobia was just, it was commonplace with Latino families, and I don't think it was until like the turn of the millennium that I think we slowly, especially with gay marriage coming out and just more, you know, queer people on TV, she became accepting fairly quick, whereas my dad never did. And then when she found out, she was like, well, I'm gonna still love you, you know, I'm not gonna treat you like just be the same person. I'm like, yeah, Mom, I'm still the same person. So she was like, okay, and then she called me from our client, she's like, hey, is it okay if I go to Pride with like a rainbow shirt? I'm like, no, Mom, you're gonna be the only person at Pride with the rainbow shirt. What will people think of you? But no, she was totally cool with it. And then we were there, and she was like, waving the flags, and that grinder story happened exactly the way I describe it. Like, what is this? Squishing around the Astroglide, the lubricant. And I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah, it's almost like that you remember, you're like, okay, Mom.
Yes. Yeah.
I also want to open it up for audience questions for our director. Anybody have any questions over the documentary? Yes.